than any time in the past 4 years at least, as we sit here in April, the Tour de France is a ton of question marks.
He's a beast. Whenever he does decide he's going to focus on something, there's nothing you can do about it, buddy. Nothing.
You're a young kid at home or a little girl who dreams of being a pro bike racer. I think, yeah, this is like another Marrianne Vos poster that you're sticking on the wall and just like, yeah, I want to be her.
25, 30 meters before the line?
Even before the victory salute, there was a look back of like, check the gap, check the gap.
It's grim. It's very grim for that team. They went from the highest of highs to the lowest of lows. Bam, like that.
Welcome back to Beyond the Podium. I'm Brent Bookwalter. We got an exciting Beyond the Podium show for you guys today. We're going to talk yesterday's news of Amstel Gold, the exciting redemption ride from Tom Pidock, finally getting his big win there, and what happened to the man of the week, the man of the classics, Mathieu Van der Poel. We saw him in the mix, but he wasn't quite up to the usual level we've seen him at the past couple of weeks. We're going to dig into that. Then we're going to look at the crazy finish of the women's edition of the Fleche Wallone, the early celebration, and arguably the GOAT, the greatest of all time in the women's peloton, Marrianne Vos, snatching victory just at the last moment in that women's race. We're going to touch on a lot of what's going on with Visma-Lease bike. Wout van Aert, we heard he's not doing the Giro. Jonas Vingegaard, how's he coming along from that crash recovery? What does that mean for the Tour de France? What does that mean for our American man, Sepp Kuss? So yeah, we're going to dig into Visma-Lease bike a bit. We're also going to look forward, go to Fleche Wallone, the next in the Ardennes Classics that we're going to see happen on Wednesday before this weekend's Liège-Bastogne-Liège. And that's what we have coming up in today's episode of Beyond the Podium. But first, I want to introduce Christian Vande Velde. I'll say it feels a little weird introducing Christian, who is definitely a few years my senior in bike racing age and definitely talking into the mic. But Christian, pleasure to be here with you today. How's it going? And what did you think of that Amstel Gold race yesterday? And take us down memory lane with your experiences of Amstel Gold as well.
Oh, man. Doing good, Brent. Good to see you, dude. We still need to, Brent and I are not so far away geographically, but each other were too lazy to drive one hour, 5 minutes maybe to each other's houses. But I'm still scared. Most likely, I think the biggest one is just too scared to ride with you, Brent. You're too fit these days. I still need to give you a couple more years to slow down, come down to reality a little bit. But the racing, thinking about what I did, and actually Ryder Hedgedall's in the house. He's upstairs right now. We were reminiscing a bit about some of the races that we've done and the experience that we had at Amstel Gold, both good, bad, and ugly. It's a crazy race. It's so dangerous out there, Brent. There's so many cars out there. I can't believe how at this day and age, what it still looks like it was 20, 30 years ago. And that was on full display. Unfortunately, there was a car crash, and that's what disrupted the women's race. They only raced 55 kilometers, so we'll get into that a little bit later. But I still love the race. It's very dynamic. It's nuts. But I'm so happy I'm on the other side of the fence, my man.
I totally hear you. I only did Amstel Gold, I think, one time in my career. And everyone always told me, my coach, my team, myself, I thought on paper it would have been a great race for me. The profile's good. It sort of has this American Critérium-esque rhythm to the sprinting in and out of corners. Lots of position fighting, those steep Dutch climbs. But I'll tell you, it didn't matter what kind of form I was in. Whenever I raced in this part of Holland, I was not good. And I have the same PTSD memories from that race, from the World Championships when they were in that area. It felt like a road furniture filled Critérium with 10,000 feet of climbing. It was I just felt panicked the entire time. I could never find position. And when I was watching it yesterday, a lot of that was coming back. I think once again, I'm just amazed when I watch these races a little more intently now as a spectator, seeing the level of focus, the intensity in everyone's face. I think one of the things that's changed even from the time I raced it till now is how these teams are riding together and how they're all hyped to be at the front every moment of the day. Amstel Gold, it has so many of these moments, so many narrow roads, so many undulating turns and ups and downs. No one team can stay at the front all the day, but it was something to see the speed at which they're taking these corners. And then the unpredictable nature that profile yields. I think that really came to the fore in producing the finish line scenario where we saw Tom Pidock cement himself as this year's champion. And then also like it was influential in the sort of demise, if you will, from the classics king of the season, Mathieu van der Poel. I think
Mm.
to me, it really sort of showed that he is a little bit of a bigger guy and that altitude does add up. I think it also showed that the nature of the course at Amstel Gold is not conducive towards just sticking your team on the front and bossing it like they did just a week prior to Paris Roubaix as well. So, yeah, I cringe thinking about what it was like to be out there, and what an unpredictable race we saw.
Well, yeah, it was an unpredictable result, I believe, as well. I mean, actually, in hindsight, to see Tom Pidock and his past results, he's one of those guys that I write off a little bit too quickly, and he always comes back and surprises me big time. He was flying. He did a great race, and the sprint was perfect what he did, reminding a lot of the viewers that he still thinks that this is the second time that he's won this race. Says there was a photo finish back when against Wout van Aert where I believe, Brent, correct me if I'm wrong, that they claimed that the camera wasn't exactly straight, or the line. So the photo finish was not straight in line, which is, oh God, it's embarrassing even to talk about, really, as a sport. but really, this is the photo here. That's Wout on the top, and then on the bottom, that is Tom Pidock. So yeah, cheekily saying, well, this is actually the second time, but he doesn't want to get into too deeply. But regardless, it was a great race, like you mentioned. I feel like, though, at the same time, it was a reprieve in between the massive focus on the cobbled classics and then the shift into the Ardennes, and some of the other people are starting to already shift and thinking about the Grand Tours. And so it didn't have that same energy. It didn't have that, it just didn't have the champions. And I think you're talking about Mathieu van der Poel being a little bit too big for the climbing. I don't agree with that, Brent. I think it's just that he's just exhausted, dude. And God knows what he got up to after he won Paris Roubaix. If it would have been you or I that you win within a stretch of 1 week, that you win Flanders and Roubaix, go have a good time. You deserve it. I mean, it's a lot of focus what he did. I mean, you have to think, he jumped on, I would assume, a private jet on Sunday night after he won Tour of Flanders, went to Spain right after that, trained there in Spain. If you think back at what he looked like, he had the nicest tan out of anyone in the peloton in Roubaix, and then crushed everyone in Roubaix. Obviously, we all know what happened out there. So that the focus that was required for those months building up, and then of course that 10 days of racing flat out, he's done. I mean, I think it was just the focus, and if he wants to go win, it was the most epic race of all time, 2019. What he did down there, dismantled everyone in the last kilometer by himself. So I think if he wanted to win, I think he still had the form. I don't think he just had the mentality, and probably the team as well. So anyway, regardless, he's a beast. If whenever he does decide he's going to focus on something, there's nothing you could do about it, buddy. Nothing. Whether going uphill, downhill, sideways, on the dirt, mud, whatever, he's gonna crush you these days.
I totally agree with you on the mental aspect of it. There definitely is some undeniable, I think, mental fatigue as much of the physical after riding on top, riding on the front, riding the way they have in such a dominant fashion. I think you could argue maybe that those, over 100 kilometers of solo breakaway efforts that he did between Flanders and Roubaix.
Hey, maybe that's a great point. I didn't even think about how many kilometers he did by himself as well. Like, race with your friends a little bit longer, buddy. Don't make it so hard.
Yeah, that's got to weigh on you a little bit, even if you do have the horsepower of Mathieu van der Poel. But I think I would still put it back to the course a little bit and the peloton. And Van der Poel even discussed it a little bit in his post-race interviews, that this is a different group of guys here now. We're starting to see more of the climbers. There is more accumulated climbing in the race. There's a lot of freshness in that mentality. When that new climbing group comes in, you got to remember, some of these guys, they've been at home building, and they're finally let off the chain. And they're like, just rabid dogs ready to go, or he's like just trying to hang on to the top. I think that definitely played into it. And he's more than ever, and it's going to keep happening now, he was a marked man. I think until the final moments, everyone that was still in that Van der Poel group was still sort of like expecting him to rip off the front and do what he did a few years ago and do that Herculean, larger than life solo bridge to the front. But the reality is, like, we even heard it from him in the post race, was, I was good today, but I wasn't amazing. And what I love about that is it is a testament to the depth of this collective field. Like, when you have a guy who has been as dominant the past few weeks, most of us as fans, we're just sort of like writing it off, like, oh, he can phone it in. He's just going to win again. But it's like, no, everyone is bringing their A game. These teams are deep. They're not just coming with one leader. We saw the team dynamic did definitely influence the end of the race, and he was a little short on riders. And it goes to show that it's not just enough to be the man of the month. You got to really bring your A game and be on top of it in terms of the team, the mentality, and of course the physicality to do it. And Tom Pidock, yeah, he did it. And it's to me, it's Tom Pidcock's classiest win. I guess you could say, like, I think personally, it's like his biggest win. Like he showed that physicality. He showed he has the level. He showed how he could lead the team, and he just rode with such confidence at the front. He looked sort of evenly matched to me physically with some of his rivals up there in that final group, but the confidence at which he rode and how he positioned himself and how he went for it on a few of those occasions in the closing meters of the race, that just cements him as a champion and big one-day classic. And I think we'll see more of that from him now that he's officially cracked this one open, even though we joked this is maybe his second win here.
Yeah, and the follow through, of course. You have to win. You could have all the confidence in the world, and he does have. Let's be honest. He's got quite a bit of confidence. The kid. I mean, going to Roubaix and thinking that he was going to just rip it right away just the week before. But thinking back, I was quite surprised he would even on the start list Roubaix. But I think that was perfect preparation for going into this race, getting that load into your legs and make sure that you're prepared for this. But more about anything else with Tom. Congratulations, you had to get a great race out there. The team Ineos, they needed that so bad, Brent, so bad to get that momentum going in the right direction. I mean, they've been really a shell of themselves for years. And to see Kwiat up there on the front, Michał Kwiatkowski, the Polish rider, who's been incredible, of course, many times in that race and the ex-world champion, up at the front in defense, knowing and having the confidence, like you said, of Tom. That was cool to see, because we've seen Ineos way too many times, let's be honest, over the last couple of years on the front for no reason whatsoever. And usually they get 27th place.
Yeah, they've been, you could argue they've been a shell of themselves in terms of the result sheet, but they haven't been a shell of themselves in terms of how they rode and their presence on the peloton. They're still often the first ones to ride. They're still riding point position in the peloton in the early or middle stages of the races, even though they don't have the winning track record that they used to have. So, and we saw them again yesterday when I turned on the coverage quite early. There they were again, and I gotta admit, I was kind of thinking like,
oh, believe I was with you. I was.
What
hating.
Are they even doing again?
I was
Come
hating
on, guys.
immediately. I was starting to throw them to the wolves. I'm like, what? Give me a break. Here we go again. They get ninth. I mean, come on. And then
shame on us though.
Exactly. Hey, I'm happy to be wrong. I'm happy to have more players in the game. Back to your point again of really the depth of the peloton. I love it. And Thies Benoot, another guy, a worker bee for Lisa. I mean, he's a guy that always in defense of Wout. I mean, he's really his right-hand man most of the time. He was the reason, let's be honest, if it wasn't for Thies going berserker, there's no way that those guys are going off the front in the first place. So Thies Benoot was riding like 10 men up there. So that was good to see one of those riders, a rider that would never be given that opportunity usually on that team to be up there on the podium. So that was a lot. So let's change over to the women's side, because that was an insane race. I alluded to some of the things that happened earlier with the car crash, changing the race from 150 some kilometers down to 55. They had to sit on the tarmac, sit in the middle of the street for over an hour while they make decisions on what they're going to do at the race. So I feel for them. I don't even know how you get yourself mentally prepared or even physically prepared to go and race only 55 kilometers when you're physically and mentally prepared. So with that car crash, I do not know what happened to the police officer after I didn't hear about it, but obviously it was quite catastrophic. So they could not race down the road that they were supposed to race down. They did a couple laps and called it a day there, which made it a completely different race. If it was 150 some kilometers, would Lorraine Wiebes been there? I don't know. She's been climbing good as of late, but not that good, most likely. So that gave her the best opportunity, probably maybe ever. She was up until this point in time. And then posting up, she was posting up, hands on the head, up here, let's go.
A little early.
25, 30 meters before the line.
Even before the victory salute, there was a look back of like, check the gap. But I gotta think that over the wrong shoulder. Um, and I got to think, well, undoubtedly that stoppage situation and the change in the race and the altered course, that definitely played a hand. And I would give a lot to have aligned the communication from Lorena Wieb's director to her and her team after that, because I really believe that changed the race enough and shifted, kind of opened the mind. Wow, we don't have that much racing left. You can be here now. You can do it. We saw her teammates do some very strong work for her. So I think, maybe they got a little bit ahead of themselves there. They realized, wow, this is maybe our best chance. It is sort of a home race for her. What an honor and opportunity to win. And she tasted it. She felt it. She was on the doorstep. And you still have to hand it to her, because she was there. We see these videos and these photos of these disastrous pre-celebratory images being, the victory snatched from them. But you got to remember, that can't happen unless you are on the doorstep of winning. And yes, sport is about winning, actually crossing the line first, but you also got to hand it, amazing ride by her and her team. And if anyone is going to beat you in that situation, arguably the greatest of all time women's cyclist, Marrianne Vos, what another masterclass. She wins the Tour de France. She wins the Giro. She wins the Vuelta. She's won pretty much all of it. And I got to think, when they were going through that stoppage, you're in the mind of Marrianne Vos, and she's like, she's already seen it all. She's like, I've seen crazier stuff than this. I've been here. I've sat on the side of the road. They've changed the course on me. I've won in all these. So they're going to start it up, and I've already done this, been there, done that. And she goes all the way to the line. I just love that. If you're a young kid at home or a little girl who dreams of being a pro bike racer, I think, this is another Marrianne Vos poster that you're sticking on the wall, and just I want to be her. Never say die. Comes back from at the final moments on the line. And arguably, if you're talking about paper, you'd say on paper, on strengths, a shortened race usually is not going to suit the older, grizzled, chiseled veteran who arguably we'd say, got to get the engine stoked up. They've been around a long time. They don't have that pep in their step anymore. But Marrianne Vos, despite being the most experienced in the peloton, she's still able to adapt to that modified race situation. So what a masterclass from her.
Win 251. 251 on the road, by the way, because she wins like Vanderpool on everywhere. But it's mind blowing what she did, and the athleticism that she shows. I think all of us have been a fan of hers for many years, but that bike throw was legit, Brent. How quick it was. She was like a ninja out there, backside off behind the saddle, like she was going down a downhill. It was so quick and ferocious coming across. That's going to be one of those where she's going to hurt. Wiebes is going to think about this forever. Unfortunately, I feel horrible for her.
How much of that is how much of it is a mistake from Lorena Wiebes versus just this miraculous move from one of the best of all time, Marrianne Vos? Is it?
Yeah. No, I'm not going to let her off that easy. It was 99.
Well, going to that, so how does this happen then? As a former racer, I'm always I feel compassionate and commiserate with anyone who makes a mistake out there, because it's so hard out there to just be out there and even go through all that, get to the finish line. But I know the fans, it's you're paid to do this. You're in the position that is something. A victory celebration is something that's in your control. So you think about all the things they've encountered and gone through the day that aren't in their control. You can let them off for those things, but this is in their control. So is this something that starts? Is it from the director? Is it start as a kid?
I don't know.
How does this happen? Speaking as a fan.
Yeah, usually sprinters have that second sense. They know exactly where everyone is at every time. But I think that she just got carried away in the moment. Thought that she was in a position, like you mentioned earlier, that she never thought she was going to be in that day. All the stars aligned in the right way. She's winning in front of home crowd. She's Dutch just as well as Marrianne Vos. Man, she looked the wrong way. And it was like a compounded just accident and errors. Looking at the right side, Marianne's coming up on the left-hand side, so she doesn't even realize she's coming. And then it was a prolonged victory celebration, because she is the best sprinter by a country mile in that group. That was on full display, obviously, for how long she pretty much stopped pedaling. And obviously by the way, it's really unaerodynamic to stay up on your bike at 65 kilometers per hour and put your hands up. So yeah, you're decelerating so quickly while Vos is accelerating to the line. So it doesn't take much, does it, dude? But I think she will hopefully learn a very valuable lesson, and she probably will never post up, and she's going to win many races. I mean, she looks fantastic. She's fitter than she's ever been. I've ever seen her. Could climb obviously still really well, because it still wasn't an easy race. So I'm sure she's going to win a lot more. And I expect to see that victory celebration coming after the line, in the races to come. And there's going to be plenty of them. So, all right, what we got next, Brent? We got a lot coming up still. We got to get going.
Let's keep ticking along. Yeah, we got to talk about Visma-Lease bike. The updates on Wout van Aert. We heard no Giro from him. He's not saying if he's going to ride the Tour de France. I think if he's not riding the Giro, he's got to ride the Tour. I think for his own personal ambitions, he's got to ride the Tour. It's complicated though. We don't even really know if Jonas Vingegaard is going to be at the Tour. But even more so, if Jonas ends up not, whether Jonas is there or not, I think Wout now has to ride, and he's got to try, just like we were talking about over and over and over on repeat last year. When is Wout going to get a stage? He's got to get a stage at the Tour, and he's got to hope that his leader Jonas Vingegaard can also get back, and he can be part of another win for his GC captain.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be very interesting, isn't it? There's got a lot of things at play. I mean, let's make it easier. Let's start with just Wout going there. Yes, I agree with you. If you're not doing the Giro, your Classics campaign was pretty much cut, not even in half. It was completely cut. You didn't even get to participate, and now you're healing up. Most of the things are okay, but the ribs in general, and this will be continued with this conversation to Jonas, and the upper chest area, it's not that it's that you can't train, you can't ride your bike. It's you can't train properly. And if you're breathing, by that I mean, if you're breathing hard, you're re-breaking or you're re-injuring those ribs, and it's just prolonging the time required to heal those ribs. So that's what Wout said. He's I could ride my bike, but I can't train. There's no way I could do it correctly. So he's pulled the plug on the Giro. And the same thing goes for Jonas. We have those upper extremities being beat up like they are. And by the way, he still hasn't gone home. When you have the lung damage that he has, he's not able to fly for up to 2 weeks, Brent. So he's still in Spain, in the Basque Country right now. So it's grim. It's very grim for that team. They went from the highest of highs to the lowest of lows, bam, like that. And it's and they're not the only ones. It's been a brutal opening season for cycling in general. With you hate to say it because there's maybe more eyes on this bad crash that happened in the Basque Country, just because I think you and TJ talked about it, because they are the caliber of riders that they are. But man, if all catastrophic crashes that we've seen in the last decade or so, I can't remember the star power being wiped out in one crash like that ever.
Yeah, that was an expensive crash for these organizations. And I mean, our hearts were skipping a beat, just like TJ and I talked about, on a human level, seeing peers and humans on the ground, like not really moving, wondering if they were even going to get up. That's the first shocker of it. But yeah, like what you said it's good to point out. I think as fans, you can look at these massive organizations and watch these athletes do superhuman feats when they're in awesome form. But the reality of a broken collarbone is a lot different than a lung injury, a broken sternum, broken ribs. Every one of those becomes more and more complicated. And like you said, Jonas still isn't even at home. So we got to also count in the mental toll that has. He's losing, every day he's off the bike, he's losing physical form. But we got to remember, like, he's also suffering right now too. And he's suffering in the worst possible way. It's one thing to say we're suffering when you're flying up a climb, ripping the legs off everyone. Oh, I was suffering so bad to keep my 2-minute solo gap. Like, no, this is probably a new kind of suffering and a new moment for Jonas right now, where he's actually wondering if he's going to get back what he has and when he's going to get it, what that means for him. There's definitely some existential soul searching going on there. And it's going to, I don't know what's going to happen.
Real quick, I have to point out to everyone that Brent is studying to be a psychologist right now. So he's deep, his nose is deep into a textbook at all times. So he's really into the mental side as well. So I'm like interested to hear your take on this, but it is funny how much focus you have on that, just maybe subconsciously as well. But no, I don't disagree at all. You know, and it's funny. I know exactly where you're going with this as well. But there's another point that I always hated when I was injured. I would like to hear your take on this as well. It's like, oh, well, he hasn't raced since X, right? And you're like, he should be fresh. You're coming back from injury, but no, your body is healing. You have literally broken bones that need to heal, ligaments. Obviously going underneath a knife. He had surgery on his collarbone already. Those take so much. That takes so much energy in the first place. We talked a lot about this with Egan Bernal and Chris Froome. You just didn't just take a vacation and go on the beach for a while and rejuvenate. Your body's literally rejuvenate just to heal in the first place. Your metabolism's gone up trying to heal the bones. And then it goes to skin, of course, for everything else that's damaged. And then you have to get fit again, what you just said. I don't know, man. So if I'm thinking of the Tour de France, if I have an asset like Jonas, I'm only taking him if he's going to win. I'm not taking him if he's got 7th place form. No, you don't take somebody like that. You make sure that he's going to be okay for the years to come, and don't take the risk that first of all he's going to do some crazy stuff because to stay at the front and pushing too hard and crash again. I mean, that would be, you want to talk about catastrophic? That'd be really bad, right? So I'm. Unfortunately, I at this point, I don't know if I see him being at the Tour de France right now. I mean, that's a crazy speculation. It's way too early to really get into this.
It's a lot of hypotheticals.
Yeah, so much.
There's a lot of time, and he does have the ultimate organization, the most resources behind him. But like you said, Absolutely. There are still limits of what the most gifted human athletes in the most resource-filled organizations can do. So let's riff off the hypotheticals a little bit. If he doesn't get there, if he's not back at the Tour, what does that mean for that organization? What does that mean for Sepp, for Mathieu? I don't want to fanboy on the Americans, but I'm also thinking we got some American guys in that organization who have ridden particularly well in the past 12 months. So what does that mean? Is Sepp the GC guy at the Tour de France then? Is Mathieu given a free role to do something? Do they just hunt stages with wow if he's back there? They're clearly hatching some plan B plans behind the scenes there. And I'm sure they're being very cagey on what they let on to, but what are those?
Yeah. I think they're making up as they go along, obviously, like they have to. I mean, you have to adjust at all times. And any team, there's always going to be crashes and sickness, but this is a big one. This is a huge one, actually. When your two marquee riders in not only your team but the entire world are out on the sidelines. Yeah, I think that. I don't know. First of all, I don't think you're fanboying just because they're Americans. These guys are. I mean, he just won the Paris and of course semi-classic, and of course thinking of Sepp Kuss winning the Vuelta last year. So no, I don't think you're fanboying. That's legitimate. Even if they're Italian, they're still bona fide killers. So. What they can do, though, in the big show is completely different. As we all know, it's a different animal altogether. Sepp notoriously doesn't enjoy that. It's not in his nature. He doesn't really like to be up there in the front banging handlebars, and he's just a incredible athlete for what he does the best that's more or less ever been done. Let's face it, as a domestique, as a selfless mountain domestique who could be up there, but decides that he would like to sleep at night and just go along his merry way. I mean,
I don't believe there's no part of this where Sepp is sitting at home going, "Oh, now's my chance. Now I'm going to go win the Tour de France."
No,
that's definitely not happening at all. That is not not happening. As much as we, as American fans, would kind of like that or want that, I don't believe that's Sepp. And I think if I'm in charge of that organization, I think it's still got to be week to week, month to month. For sure, they have some Plan B strategies, and they're adapting day by day. They do have the man that's won the Tour de France the past 2 years. When he did crash, when he did break his bones, I think for now it's you control what you can control. You go day by day, week by week. You still have faith and believe, but there definitely has to be a point in the spring, and it's going to be in mid to late May, June at the absolute latest. If he's going to race the Tour after a big off period, he's got to be lining up at the Dauphiné or Tour de Suisse. And he's not going to go to those races either to just ride around and finish and get race form. He's got to be ready for those. So it's a pretty tight timeline. And I think he's definitely up against it.
Yeah, he's definitely off. I think there's going to be checks and balances along the way. And I think there's going to be a hard line at some point in time. And I would agree with that. Like last week of May, let's say, a month out, for example. Let's not forget the tour starts a week earlier because of the Olympics. So we start in June and not the first weekend in July like they always do. So that another, let's call it a negative in the old Visma camp. So yeah, I would say like end of May that's going to be a line in the sand when they're making a decision, whether or not they make that decision public or not. But I bet internally they'll be making the decision. Regardless, Mathieu can do a great race. I mean, he's a completely different athlete than he was last year. He was already good at last year's Tour de France, going into many different breakaways that we saw, of course, in Podium, which is hard to forget. I'm sure he'll never forget that. But what he did this year, how he was riding yesterday, what he looked like in Amstel Gold. He looks great, but I think he's exhausted though as well right now. He needs a rest. He needs a reset. It's been a big one. He's changing teams, changed everything. I mean, his position is completely different. Position on the bike is different. Nutrition is different. Training's different. Everything's different. Obviously, it's working and it's positive and he's loving it. He texted me after Paris-Nice, it's changed my mentality and my love of the sport has come back. And so if he's having a good time and getting these kind of results, he's going to continue to get better and better with every passing month. So, what he could do in the GC, who knows? I'm not going to put it out there, but Sepp, if he wants it and he is grinding with that kind of form, I mean, talk about one of the biggest question marks of, absolutely top five. Absolutely can be top five. Podium starts getting a little bit harder when you start thinking about that. But again, I wouldn't put on the realm of possibility on the podium at the Tour de France. No way. I mean, especially if it's the right day and if it's hard enough in the climbs. Yeah.
You also can't ignore that we're also, Remco's he's losing momentum right now. Primoz is losing momentum right now. We have Velde is going to be at the Giro. Who knows what the heck happens over 3 weeks in Italy too. So more than any time in the past 4 years, at least, as we sit here in April, the Tour de France is a ton of question marks. And I don't have a crystal ball, so I'm going to be watching the upcoming races. I think almost more excited than ever because we have a lot of comeback stories. But we still have a lot of the superstars racing. Some of them are going to be at the Four again this Wednesday at Fleche Wallone. Mathieu van der Poel is not going to be lining up at Fleche Wallone. Pogacar is not going to be lining up at Fleche Wallone. They're going to be waiting till keeping their powder dry until Liège. But Fleche Wallone, Christian, I know you have plenty of experience at that race. I do too. That the Mur de Huy, one of the most violent, fierce, steepest finishing efforts in cycling. But that said, I think what stood out to Fleche Wallone the most from my memories as a racer was being there the year Cadel Evans won, being with him in the recon, seeing how many times he re-rode the last climb, not for any sort of physical effort, but to perfect the timing. And we see that time and time again. You think you're watching him grunt up this steep, relentless, brutal climb, and you think so-and-so's got it. He's got it. And then you're like, no, it's all coming apart. And it changes in the last 50 meters. So it clearly is about physicality. You've got to be able to climb. You've got to be able to handle the Ardennes technical twisty roads and corners, but the timing and the art of that finishing move has to be perfection. And there isn't a rider on the start list there's not the Alejandro Valverde that we saw win time and time again.
I wish there was a Bala.
He's not there.
It's Valverde. Yeah. We're going to go with Valverde. I mean, Pidcock is on the start list. And as long as he's deciding to continue to go with that, even after his stage win. Mark Hirschi looks great. I'm going through the top three. It's pretty easy. Thies Benoot, of course. He was the one who made all that separation in Amstel Gold. Skelmos was looking good. He's always looking good. He's up there last year. Ayuso is my one guy that I think if he's on his day, and just like TJ has pointed out many times, I love kind of bowling him over, and he represents ATL in the dirty South near us, so it's even better for us, Brent. I like him a lot. If he is feeling good, he didn't look good yesterday though, did he? He didn't look good at all in Amstel Gold. So, but if it's gonna be a different course, as we all know, the roads are much wider. It's not playing Mario Kart like you see in Amstel Gold Race. So I think that's going to be in his favor going forward. And if the race is hard enough, it's so fast though. I mean, remember when we thought this was a longer race, and now it's one of the shortest semi-classes we got, right? It's less than 200 kilometers, the climbs, everyone waits. It's pretty formulaic. But like you said, it's all about timing. You all think that it's, oh yeah, it's who's got the legs. Yeah, but who's got, well, you have to have a little bit of intelligence as well. And when you use it, you have to have a lot of, um, maybe not, but I'm gonna say that you have to have experience. You have to know what that feels like. You have to know what that load feels like, and still be able to go a little bit deeper with 100 meters to go, which feels like another kilometer, by the way. When it feels like it's getting flat and it's still 12%. I mean that's nasty up that climb. And like you said earlier, I was gonna say the exact same thing you did, Brent. It's all about timing. You'll see it. I guarantee you will see it on Wednesday when you're thinking that somebody's going to win and they're going to get seventh. They're going to get seventh place,
Yeah.
or fourth.
Oh yeah,
they're not going to be there.
Yeah, we used to say when we were racing, once you can see the top, you can't get dropped because the top's right there. But like, if there's any climb in cycling that exemplifies the counter to that, it's the Mur de Huy. It's you see the top, and then you can not just get dropped, you can finish like a minute behind, because those last 250 meters just seem to take minutes and minutes and minutes. And yeah, it's such a race within the race that unfolds there. And I think, yeah, like you said, Christian, I'll definitely back that in terms of the experience helping, with knowing what it's like to be on the podium and ride for the win there will undoubtedly favor guys like Mark Hirschi, who we saw in stellar form Sunday, but he also knows what it's like to ride up to Mur de Huy and finish on the podium.
Yeah, Schelmos. Brandon McNulty will be there. I think UAE is going to have their hands full. They're going to have a lot going on there. So a very good possibility that we're seeing Brandon taking some wicked pulls on the penultimate climb, for example, which comes in really quick succession after that descent, going straight down. Again, dangerous, like, oh God, talk about PTSD again, some of those descents right there in Fleche Wallone. And then, of course, the bowl yards and going underneath the bridge. I mean, I could recount every step on the way to the bottom of the Mur de Huy. Fantastic race. It's going to be really quick, as usual. A lot of horsepower. One thing I've been talking about for the last 3 or 4 years are the breakaways and how hard they are to take back these days, Brent, when you have a powerful group of, let's say, 5 to 7 riders going up the road. But I still don't see that happening again, man. I would love to see a breakaway. I'd love to see a chase or a race within the race at Fleche, but this is the one race where you could almost count on it. There's going to be a group out there for sure, but they're going to be brought back at some point in time, and it's going to be game, set, match on the bottom Mur de Huy, and it's just going to be a brawl to the top. And that's that's the only negative about the Fleche Wallone is it's always that one thing, that one thing, but it is incredible. I mean, it's
even
awesome.
And even if you have a big gap as a group, like, it's one thing to get a small group away, have the gap, but undoubtedly, like, then you're doing this all out effort. I mean, we saw that effort from the small group that Pidcock won out of Amstel Gold. Those guys were going, when they're pulling, they are not doing cagey pulls. They are flopping on the bike. They are giving it everything. They're really pouring it on to stay away from those groups behind. They're waiting until like the last kilometer. At Fleche Wallone, it just doesn't work because that last climb is so hard. And despite it being relatively short, it's so steep at the time you're sitting on that climb with gravity just ripping you back down the slopes for so long. It really is not conducive for any sort of long range move. But I agree. Like, I think who knows? This modern day cycling, as we keep saying, keeps throwing more and more surprises at us. So it could happen, but I don't think it is. I think it's going to be Grupo Compacto select group at the bottom, and then we're going to see one of these really cagey, tactical, and also artful displays of performance and physicality at the top.
We'll see, man. We'll see. It's going to be a big week. And again, I think the really overarching theme is just no clue what's going to happen. I mean, there's so many people on the sideline that they were supposed to be at the top.
Yeah, for sure.
I love that, Brent. I love that when people ask me and I say I don't know.
I don't know.
Because it was getting really lame for a while when you like with absolute certainty this is who's going to win this race. Like don't be. Yeah. I'll tell you right now, and for sure it would happen. But now it's great, and it shows a depth of peloton like you mentioned earlier, and then of course all these crashes, different people's brace programs. It's gonna be good.
Yeah, well, I think I know that some of the fans at home watching this show, I know they have their ideas. So I've enjoyed reading some of the comments. It can be a double-edged sword drifting down into the comments of these shows, but definitely for all the viewers, chime in. Who's going to win Fleche Wallone? Are Christian and I totally off? yeah, the comments are making the show good. We know from the comments that TJ, we got to do a little bit of coaching about today, Pogacar, and how to pronounce that. We're going to work on him. That's hard stuff, Christian. I mean, you've been at this TV talking, microphone talking thing longer than I have, but it's hard to learn all the names. And I'll say, as recently being in the Peloton, we're rolling through the Peloton. You're riding with someone, you're having a conversation with them. I don't necessarily know the exact pronunciation of their name. So, TJ's still in the team car. He's still, he's able to have a conversation with these guys, but it doesn't mean he knows how to ace the pronunciation of everyone's name. So, yeah, we're all working on our own thing. We're all a work in progress. So,
I mean, how about Ramunas Navadarskas? Do you remember Ramunas? Of course. I mean, one of the best. And at training camp, he said, hello, and especially you could barely speak English at the time. That's another factor as well. I mean, he spoken how you should say it in Lithuanian. Navadarskas, I can't even pronounce it the way it's supposed to be pronounced. And he's like, don't worry, don't. He was so shy and cute. He's like, no, don't, just call me Nunes. Don't even try. Okay. Don't even. Just call me Nunes, Nuna, whatever. I don't care. You call me, hey. But same thing. But if there's ever doubt, the one thing that we have done well is just go to mom. Steve Perino is so good at finding mom on the side of the road, or dad. And how do you pronounce your name? Record that, and then but gotcha. So yeah,
I love that.
Everything's. I mean,
no doubt. I mean, yeah, TJ's gonna be peaking for the Tour de France. He's gonna be dialed by then. He'll be knowing how to pronounce everyone's name. And yeah, I'm gonna keep working on it too. So, Christian, it's been a pleasure hashing it out with you today on this episode of Beyond the Podium. We'll look forward to y'all tuning in next week at the next edition of Beyond the Podium.
Let's go ride.
Let's ride. Yeah, let's go ride.
All right.
For all your cycling content year-round, subscribe to NBC Sports YouTube page. We got it all.